Rev up your engines!
Now, Alibaba, that huge Chinese corporation, they're getting in the autonomous driving business. They just applied to test self-driving vehicles that don't have an in-car driver. They got somebody following it somewhere else to try to do autonomous vehicle driving in California. You know what I say to that one? Hey, Alibaba, it's a Chinese company. Why don't they test the things in China first? Get them perfected before they bring them to the United States. So far, General Motors' autonomous driving unit is the only one that has a permit for doing the autonomous driving without a driver actually in the car in case there's a mistake. But the Chinese are trying to get this permit to test autonomous driving vehicles with no driver, safety driver in the car. Why don't they test them out in China first? I don't want them tested out in the United States. I certainly would not want them tested out in my neighborhood. They might run over my cat, the neighbor's kids. Who knows what would happen with those things? They would spend that kind of money, they can make a fake city. Let them test it there, not with real people in the real world. Everybody's heard about Fiat Chrysler merging with Peugeot, the French company. Well, the head of the French company is this Portuguese guy. His name is Tavares, and he likes racing cars. And he's talking about turning around Alfa Romeo and making them have a big comeback. Well, if you ask me, this is yet another example of rich guys trying to foist what their idea of nice cars are on the public and not thinking of what the ramifications are. Take Henry Ford. He made cars for the everyday man and woman. Of course, back then it was mainly men buying cars. But the Tavares guy, if he thinks he's going to bring back Alfa Romeo, I got news for him. They've made junk for so long, and they keep saying they're trying to bring it back, and they can't because they're garbage cars. They cost too much money. They break all the time. Why don't they just let the name die? It can die with other failed cars. Saab. And really, when it comes down to it, they should just let Jaguar go too. Now it's not even English. It's half Indian and half Chinese. And it merged with Land Rover, so it's Jaguar Land Rover's one company. Well, Alfa Romeo should be no company if you ask me. And if that guy Tavares is planning on bringing him back, well, it doesn't shock me because, I mean, you've got Fiat, a bad company, merging with Chrysler, a bad company, merging with Peugeot, another bad company. So, bad decisions maybe all over the place in that company. But, hey, if you're listening to Forrest, Scotty says, forget Alfa Romeos. They're a dead brand. They're overrated. Expensive Fiats, basically. And the Fiats are bad enough. These are like more expensive Fiats that break down even more. Maybe somebody will put the man to his senses and he won't try to really revive Alfa Romeo. I guess he's got some kind of fond memories of the past when he was a young man in Spain driving an Alfa. I don't know, but I think it's a stupid business decision. Well, as Jamon says, I got a Dodge Charger Hemi. I changed the crankshaft sensor and the camshaft sensor, but it still has the codes. It says they're bad. Hell, what's a Dodge product? You never know. Wiring could go bad. Computers could go bad. But if you've got a reasonable amount of miles on that Hemi engine, first check the timing chain. Because if you go both the crankshaft and the camshaft sensor codes, that generally means they're not correlating right. And the computer sees they're not correlated and it trips both codes. Your timing chain stretches, they won't be correlated because instead of being tight and being the way they are, they're now further apart because the chain is stretched. Often on those, it's a bad timing chain. Have that checked, or if you don't know how to check that, have a mechanic check it. Odds are you're going to find the timing chain is going to need to be replaced because they will stretch over time and trip both of those codes. And then changing the sensors isn't going to do squat because the sensors are actually doing their job, but the data they're giving the computer confuses it so it thinks they're wrong. There is no code for stretched timing chain. They didn't make the computers good enough for that. Radiant Mice says, I got an '08 Ducati Desmond Dollar, Ducati's road legal motor GP bike with 25,000 miles. I start up, I hear a little clanking, and it goes away. What could it be? Well, I can tell you what it is. It's crazy Italian engineering. That's a race design bike. And most of the Ducatis have the same, even if they're not really the racing Ducatis, they have the same design. They have what's called a dry clutch in that motorcycle. Now, you take most modern motorcycles, they have wet clutches. The clutch system is soaked in engine oil. You got the clutch all wet, isn't it going to slip? Well, no, they're designed that way so that they're lubricated and they last longer. Ducati's still living way in the past, and they're using a dry clutch in a motorcycle. Well, guess what? After they wear it, they start clanking, and every single Ducati I've ever seen with that kind of mileage on it made that clanking noise. It isn't going to hurt anything, but that's how Ducatis are. They're not made to last forever and be quiet. And that dry design, it's a racing design, so you get a little more grip on high speeds, but for normal driving, a wet motorcycle clutch is much better than a dry one. That's just for the racing, and then they get noisy, because let's face it, racing motorcycles, after every race, they take them apart, put new clutches in anyway, so they don't care. Well, you're not going to be putting a new clutch in every, 300 miles unless you're insane. So, you just got stuck with a Italian motorbike. Live with that noise. That's what they do. Winter's coming. It's here for a lot of people already. Here's something I learned recently that kind of surprised me. Up north, a lot of people put on winter tires for the snow and ice. It isn't just the tread pattern that makes the snow tires work. The rubber compound that's inside those tires. Now, I knew it for normal tires for years because you'd see these Chinese-made tires, and their tire pattern was an exact copy of some well-made American or European tires, but they didn't perform as well. Rubber compound. The Chinese were using a poorer rubber compound that didn't grip the road as well. Canadian guy decided he was going to test them out. He got tires that are designed for milder winters and tires that are designed for rougher winters, like in Finland and Canada. And he found that racing around tracks, that with the tires that were made for the colder weather, in colder weather, he could get 10 seconds off the lap time on the tires that had the correct compound versus ones that were made for a milder winter. You want to check out the manufacturers of the snow tires you're buying. What compounds are they using? How were they tested? Just don't go by tread patterns. A lot of people just think, all snow tires are made the same. No, they aren't. Northern Alberta, you might want to get a tire that is designed for the colder weather, that has a different type of rubber compound than one for a milder winter. A lot of people don't think about this stuff, but if you're going to spend your money wisely, do a little research. Tops 8341. I'm looking to purchase a second work vehicle. 2003 Isuzu Eximo with 140,000 miles. Has a 3.5 V6 Honda engine. Depends where you live. If you live in the United States, stay far away. Isuzus are impossible to get parts for. Hardly anybody knows how or even wants to work on the things. Mechanics. But if you live in another country, you might be happy with it. Don't pay too much for it with that kind of mileage. It's a 17-year-old vehicle with 140,000 miles on it. Don't pay much for it. I got customers that moved to Europe, friends in Australia. They had them. They were relatively happy. If parts are available where you live and mechanics know how to work on them, they can be decent vehicles, but with that mileage. And 17 years old. Don't pay much for it. And you did say work vehicle, but you said second work vehicle. You got to put a few thousand miles a year on it. But if you're going to use that as an actual work vehicle, put 20, 30,000 miles a year on it, stay away. It'll fall apart while you watch it. An old car like that can't put that kind of mileage on 20, 30,000 miles a year. Things will start breaking down. Jackie Child says, Scotty, is there anything like a reliable cargo work van? Well, yes, there are. It depends on what you want, how much money you want to pay. If you're talking about brand new, the Ford Transit vans are good too if you buy them new. And you have to decide what you want and what you want to pay for. Let's say you carry a lot of weight and you're doing a lot of long distance traveling on the highway, get yourself one with a diesel engine. You don't want a gasoline engine for doing long hauls and heavy duty weight. Now, if you're just bopping around in town, short ones, you can use a gasoline engine, that's fine. I do kind of stress here that since it's a cargo work van, you should buy them new. I know, people I say, well, Scott, you always say buy used vehicles. Yes, in your own personal use, buy used vehicles, save a bunch of money. But if it's a business thing, cargo work van, people buy those things for business. They use the heck out of them. If you try to buy a used one, they often are all beat up. You're throwing your money away for something that's worn out. If you have a business, you really are better off buying a brand new one, taking care of it, and getting hundreds of thousands of miles. In that case, unless you're a mechanic, I don't advise buying used cargo work vans because guys often beat the heck out of them and are falling apart by the time you get your hands on them. I've had a lot of customers buy used ones with 150,000 miles, and they had nothing but trouble with it. They didn't know how it was maintained, had a lot of mileage. You buy them new, you're going to get a lot of life out of them. George, the new mechanic, says, hey, Scotty, my 2016 Nissan Versa, the clutch pedal seems to engage about 3/4 of the way pushed out. Is there any way I can change that? Well, there's a little adjusting rod on your clutch master cylinder. Under the pedal, you see you loosen a little nut that's usually like a 14 millimeter. Then you can screw it to make it longer or shorter and then adjust it. But yours is going what happens when the clutch itself is wearing out. They start grabbing at a higher height. The odds are you can adjust it till your heart's content. It isn't going to change it all that much because you're in a reasonable amount of time going to need a new clutch assembly. And take my advice. When you have a clutch replaced, don't just say, oh, I'll just replace the disc or I'll just replace the throttle bearing. Buy a kit. For those Versas, I can get kits for 110 bucks here in Houston and have all the parts. Change all the parts out when you put a clutch in. Just don't change one or two parts, because when you change them all, then you have to think about it for years and years and years. It's a big job pulling that tranny off. You pull that tranny off, and you don't change all those parts, and then one of those parts breaks, you got to pull it off again. So change them all when you change the clutch. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.